Fear is the wrong word for what we are talking about. The right word is respect, the deep kind. The kind that is not given because of a title or a position or the visible markers of success that the world assigns value to temporarily and withdraws just as temporarily when the title changes or the position shifts. The kind that is earned through the particular quality of a mind that has been trained so deliberately and so consistently that it operates differently from most minds around it. More clearly, more calmly, more deliberately. The kind of mind that does not react to everything, that does not reveal everything, that does not need external validation to know its own worth, that does not collapse under pressure or inflate under praise, that holds its direction when the environment is trying to redirect it, that speaks rarely enough that its words carry genuine weight when they finally arrive. Most people have never encountered a mind like this in its fully developed form, but most people have felt the presence of one. That particular quality of stillness in someone who clearly has more going on internally than they are choosing to share. The calmness that does not waver when everyone else in the room is reacting. The clarity that produces the right response at the right moment while others are still processing the situation. The patience that can wait for the correct moment rather than acting at the first available one. All of that is the product of training, not talent, not natural temperament. Training. The deliberate, daily, progressive practice of working on the mind with the same seriousness that the serious athlete works on the body. The Stoics spent their entire philosophy building exactly that kind of mind. Not for the purpose of being feared, for the purpose of being genuinely free. Free from the automatic reactions that most people are run by. Free from the need for external approval that makes most people permanently manipulable. Free from the distortions that unmanaged emotion introduces into perception and decision-making. Free to choose the response rather than being driven by the automatic one. And that freedom, the genuine internal freedom of a trained mind, has a specific and observable byproduct. The people around it feel it. They feel the quality of it before they can name it. And what they feel produces in them exactly the kind of deep, genuine respect that the untrained mind spends its entire life performing for and never quite achieving. This conversation is about building that mind. 8 lessons. The Stoic foundations of the mental training that produces the kind of presence other people feel before they can explain why they feel it. Before we get started, drop a comment below with a line you genuinely stand behind. I train my mind every single day. Lesson 1. The untrained mind is not your mind. It is everyone else's. Here is the first thing worth understanding about mental training. The mind you are currently operating with is largely not the one you built. It is the one that was built for you, by the environment you grew up in, by the emotional patterns your family modeled consistently enough that your brain absorbed them as the normal way of responding to difficulty, to conflict, to uncertainty, to failure. By the culture that told you what to value and what to fear and what success looks like and what failure means. By the accumulated weight of every experience that shaped your automatic responses before you were old enough or conscious enough to evaluate whether those responses were actually serving you. And those inherited patterns do not stay neatly contained in the past. They show up in your daily life in ways that are often invisible until you go looking for them honestly. The person who learned that expressing emotion produced withdrawal from the people who raised them becomes the adult who cannot access genuine vulnerability in relationships that genuinely need it. The person who learned that being needed produced love becomes the adult who cannot stop helping people even when the helping is slowly depleting everything they have. The person who learned that achievement produced approval becomes the adult who cannot rest without guilt, because rest does not produce anything to be approved of. These are not personality traits. They are learned patterns running on autopilot, and most people go their entire lives operating on that inherited programming without ever seriously examining it. They react the way they were conditioned to react. They value what they were conditioned to value. They fear what they were conditioned to fear. And they call all of it their personality, their authentic self, the way they naturally are. But it is not natural. It is learned. And what is learned can be examined. And what is examined can be changed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit. The second is to look things in the face and know them for what they are. Look things in the face and know them for what they are. The first thing to look in the face is the mind itself. The patterns it runs automatically. The responses it produces without conscious choice. The fears it treats as facts. The assumptions it treats as reality. All of it is worth examining honestly, not to produce guilt or self-criticism, to produce accurate information, because you cannot train what you have not honestly assessed, and you cannot genuinely improve what you are still pretending is simply the way you naturally are. The untrained mind belongs to everyone who shaped it. The trained mind belongs to you, and the work of building one from the other begins with this honest examination. Lesson 2. Emotional mastery is not emotional suppression. It is the most misunderstood training available. Most people misunderstand what emotional mastery means. They think it means not feeling things. The cold person, the disconnected one, the one who has somehow suppressed the capacity for genuine emotional response in the service of appearing in control. That is not mastery. That is suppression. And suppression is not training. It is avoidance dressed as discipline. Genuine emotional mastery is something entirely different. It is the developed capacity to feel fully without being run by what you feel. To experience anger without the anger making your decisions. To experience fear without the fear directing your behavior. To experience the full range of human emotion while maintaining the internal space in which genuine choice about your response remains available. That capacity is built through a specific practice that the Stoics called the discipline of assent. The practice of creating a genuine pause between the emotion arising and the response being given. In that pause, the emotion is felt and acknowledged. It is not suppressed, but it is not automatically acted on either. It is held in the space of genuine examination. Is this emotion giving me accurate information about the situation? Or is it giving me the conditioned response that my history has trained me to produce regardless of whether it serves this specific situation? Those two questions asked honestly in the pause begin to separate the emotion from the reaction, and that separation is where genuine mastery begins. Here is something worth understanding about why this discipline is so practically important. Emotions are not always accurate reporters. They feel like truth in the moment of experiencing them, but they are heavily influenced by past experience, by conditioning, by the patterns absorbed in environments that may be entirely different from the current one. The anger that feels completely justified may be disproportionate to what actually occurred, and proportionate to something that occurred long ago in a different situation entirely. The fear that feels like a genuine signal about the present situation may actually be the echo of a past situation that the current one merely resembles on the surface. The trained mind can make that distinction. The untrained one cannot, because the untrained mind does not have the pause in which the distinction can be made. It simply feels and reacts and calls the reaction appropriate because the feeling that produced it was real. Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The reaction is the trainable element, not the emotion, the reaction. And the training happens in the pause, in the deliberate practice of creating enough space between stimulus and response that genuine choice can occur. Here is what that training produces over time that most people never experience. the ability to be in genuinely difficult situations, situations that would produce reactive behavior in most people, with a quality of calmness that is not performed. That is not the suppression of what you feel. That is the genuine capacity to feel without being run by the feeling. And that capacity, visible in the particular quality of composure it produces, is one of the primary things that other people feel when they encounter a genuinely trained mind. The calmness is real, and real calmness in difficult situations communicates something about the quality of the mind that produces it that no performance of calmness ever can. Lesson 3. The discipline of attention. Controlling what your mind feeds on. The mind becomes what it consistently consumes. This is not a metaphor. It is a neurological reality. The brain builds and strengthens the neural pathways that are most frequently activated. The thoughts you think most often become the thoughts that are most automatically available. The patterns you practice most consistently become the patterns that run most automatically. The inputs you give your mind most regularly shape the lens through which the mind interprets everything it encounters, which means that the training of the mind is not only about what you do with your thoughts, it is about what you feed them, what content you consume regularly, what conversations you participate in consistently, what environments you place yourself in habitually. All of these are inputs, and the quality of those inputs determines the quality of the thinking that follows. The Stoics were intensely deliberate about this. They understood that the mind cannot be trained in isolation from what it is consistently exposed to, that surrounding yourself with people and content and environments that reinforce reactive thinking, shallow thinking, fear-based thinking, produces more reactive, shallow, fear-based thinking regardless of how much personal development work you are attempting alongside it. Seneca wrote, "Show me who you spend time with, and I will tell you who you are becoming, not who you already are, who you are becoming, because becoming is not a fixed state. It is a continuous process, shaped moment by moment by what the mind is consistently being fed. The practical application of this is both simple and genuinely demanding. Audit honestly what your mind is consuming on a regular basis, not what you wish it were consuming, what it actually is. Start with these 3 specific categories. The first is what you consume in the first 30 minutes of every morning. Before any other input arrives, before the phone is checked, before the news is absorbed, what is the first thing your mind is being given? Because the first input of the day sets the cognitive tone for everything that follows. The mind that begins in reactive consumption mode, scrolling through whatever the algorithm decided to present, spends the rest of the day slightly behind itself, always responding to what arrived rather than directing from what was chosen. The second category is the conversations you participate in most frequently, not occasionally, most frequently. The daily exchanges that form the background of your social life. Are those conversations building something in the quality of your thinking, or are they reinforcing the kind of thinking that keeps you exactly where you are? The third category is the digital environments you inhabit most habitually, the platforms, the feeds, the content categories you return to repeatedly without conscious decision. All of these are shaping the mind whether or not the shaping is deliberate, and the person who makes the shaping deliberate is building a different kind of mind from the person who leaves it to the algorithm. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. The quality of your thoughts depends significantly on the quality of what produces them. Feed the mind deliberately." Lesson 4. The power of the considered response. Why thinking before speaking changes everything. There is a specific and observable difference between the person who thinks before speaking and the person who speaks before thinking, not in terms of intelligence, in terms of impact. The person who speaks before thinking produces a high volume of words that must be sorted for meaning. Some of those words are valuable. Many are the unfiltered output of a mind that has not yet finished processing. Reactive words, defensive words, words generated by the emotion of the moment rather than by the genuine thinking that the moment required. And over time, the people around this person learn to sort, to listen with a filter that discounts a significant portion of what is said, because experience has taught them that a significant portion is not yet ready to be spoken. The person who thinks before speaking produces a smaller volume of words, but those words have been through a genuine internal process before they were released. They reflect actual thought rather than unfiltered reaction. They are more precise, more accurate, more likely to produce the intended effect. And over time, the people around this person stop sorting. They listen fully when this person speaks, because experience has taught them that what is said is worth the full attention of genuine listening. That is not a small difference. That is the difference between influence and noise, and it is built through the specific practice of introducing genuine thought between the impulse to speak and the speaking itself. Here is something practical worth understanding about how this works in real situations. Most reactive speech happens because the impulse to respond arrives before the assessment of whether responding is actually necessary. The comment lands and immediately the mind begins composing the reply, not because the reply is necessary, because the impulse to reply is automatic, and the trained mind interrupts that automatic process. Not to suppress the response, to assess it before releasing it. Does this response serve the actual situation, or does it serve the emotional state of the moment? Does this response move things forward, or does it simply express what I am feeling? Does this response reflect how I actually want to engage in this situation, or is it simply what arrived first? Those questions take seconds to ask honestly, and the response that survives them is categorically better than the one that would have been produced without them. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." The deeper point beyond the ratio is about the quality of what is produced when speaking finally happens. The quality is determined by what occurred in the silence before the speaking, whether genuine thought happened, whether the emotion was assessed before the words were chosen. All of that internal process practiced consistently builds the capacity for the kind of considered response that carries genuine weight. And genuine weight in communication is one of the most direct expressions of a trained mind that other people encounter in daily life. Lesson 5. Stillness under pressure. The training that separates levels. Pressure reveals the actual quality of the mind, not the quality it performs in comfortable situations, the quality it actually is when the comfortable situation has been replaced by genuine difficulty, when the stakes are real and the outcome is uncertain, and the emotional pull toward reactive behavior is genuinely strong. In those moments, the untrained mind does what it has always done. It reacts. It contracts around the threat. It narrows its perception to the immediate danger. It produces the fight-or-flight responses that were designed for physical survival and that are largely counterproductive in complex human situations requiring nuanced judgment. The trained mind does something different, not something that requires superhuman effort, something that has been practiced enough that it is available even under genuine pressure. It creates the pause. Even when the pressure is real, even when the emotion is strong, even when every reactive instinct is pushing toward immediate behavior, it holds the space of genuine assessment long enough for the considered response to be possible. And from that space, the decisions made under pressure are qualitatively different from the reactive decisions produced by the untrained mind. More accurate, more effective, more genuinely aligned with what the situation actually requires, rather than with what the emotional state of the moment is demanding. Here is something most people do not understand about stillness under pressure. It is not a natural gift that some people have and others do not. It is a trained capacity. And it is trained in the ordinary moments, not the extraordinary ones. Every time you practice the pause in a low-stakes situation, You are building the neural pathway that will make the pause available in a high-stakes one. Every time you choose the considered response in a minor conflict, you are training the response pattern that will be available in a major one. Every time you maintain clarity in a small pressure, you are building the capacity for clarity in a significant one. The training is cumulative, and it happens in the daily ordinary moments that most people do not recognize as training opportunities because the stakes feel too low to matter. But they are the only place the training can actually happen, because you cannot develop the capacity for stillness under genuine pressure by never practicing stillness. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire under conditions of genuine and sustained pressure, wars, political betrayals, the constant weight of decisions that affected millions of lives. And he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Power over your mind, under genuine pressure, not the power to eliminate the pressure, the power to maintain the quality of the internal processing, despite the pressure. That power is built through practice, in the 1,000 smaller moments that preceded every larger one. Lesson 6. Discipline is not restriction. It is the architecture of genuine freedom. Most people experience discipline as something imposed from outside, as the restriction of what they want to do in service of what they are supposed to do, as the uncomfortable opposite of freedom rather than its foundation. This understanding of discipline is fundamentally wrong, and the wrong understanding is responsible for most people's failure to build the consistent practice that genuine mental training requires. Because if discipline is experienced as restriction, it will always be in conflict with the desire for freedom. And that conflict sustained long enough produces the pattern most people know intimately. The burst of effort followed by the return to the default. The good week followed by the collapse back into familiar patterns. The genuine intention consistently undermined by the equally genuine resistance to the discipline that the intention requires. The Stoic understanding of discipline is completely different. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Discipline is the practice of mastering yourself, and mastering yourself is not restriction. It is the construction of the internal architecture from which genuine freedom becomes possible. The person without discipline is not free. They are run by impulse and habit and the conditioned patterns of the untrained mind. They go where those patterns direct them. They react as those patterns have trained them to react. They make the choices that those patterns have made automatic. That is not freedom. That is the most complete form of captivity available. The captivity of a mind that believes it is choosing while being directed entirely by patterns it has never examined. Here is how to understand what genuine discipline actually feels like when it is properly understood. The undisciplined person experiences effort every time they try to override their automatic patterns, because they are fighting the pattern every time. The disciplined person has practiced the override so consistently that the override has itself become the pattern. The pause before responding has become more automatic than the immediate reaction. The considered response has become more natural than the reactive one. The deliberate direction of attention has become more habitual than the scattered following of whatever is loudest. And at that point, the discipline is no longer experienced as restriction. It is experienced as simply who they are. The freedom is not the absence of discipline. The freedom is what discipline produced. The capacity to operate as you genuinely intend, rather than as the inherited patterns conditioned you to operate. That capacity is the only genuine freedom available, and it is built through exactly the practice that feels like restriction to the person who has not yet understood what it is building. Lesson 7. The long game. Why the trained mind always wins over time. Here is something worth understanding about the relationship between mental training and genuine success. The results of mental training are not immediately visible. The person who begins the deliberate practice of working on their mind does not become noticeably different in the first week, or the first month. The changes are happening at a level that is below the threshold of daily observation. The neural pathways are being built. The automatic patterns are being slowly modified through consistent practice of different responses. The emotional mastery is developing incrementally through the daily practice of the pause. The attention is being trained gradually through the consistent practice of deliberate direction. None of this is visible day to day, but it is happening, and its accumulation over months and years produces something that becomes dramatically visible in the quality of the decisions made, and the quality of the presence projected, and the quality of the outcomes generated. The Stoics understood this deeply. They were not a philosophy of quick results. They were a philosophy of the long game. The understanding that genuine quality of character is built slowly and lasts permanently, while the performance of quality is built quickly and collapses under pressure. Here is what makes the long game genuinely worth committing to, even when the daily results are invisible. The compound effect of mental training works exactly like the compound effect of financial investment. The daily practice produces small incremental improvements. Those small improvements build on each other, and the accumulation over time produces results that are dramatically disproportionate to what any single day of practice could have predicted. The person who practiced the pause every day for a year is not slightly better at creating space between stimulus and response than the person who did not. They are fundamentally different in the quality of their responses, because a year of daily practice has rebuilt the automatic pattern at a neurological level. The pause is no longer an effortful override of the automatic reaction. It has become the automatic reaction. Seneca wrote, "Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. Each separate day as a separate life." Each day of genuine practice is not preparation for the future person you are trying to become. It is the building of that person, right now, in this day, in the quality of the choices made today, in the practice of the pause today, in the deliberate direction of attention today, in the considered response chosen today over the reactive one. All of that is the building, not the preparation for the building, the actual construction of the mind that other people will eventually feel when they encounter it. And the person who understands this stops waiting for the results to validate the practice. They understand that the practice is the result, that the daily building is the daily winning, not visibly, not dramatically, not in ways that produce immediate external validation, in the quiet and cumulative way that genuine things are always built. One practiced day at a time, until the accumulation becomes undeniable. Lesson 8. The trained mind in the world, what it produces and why it is felt. When all the training comes together, when the emotional mastery and the disciplined attention and the considered response and the stillness under pressure and the long game commitment have been practiced long enough to become genuine character rather than effortful performance, something specific happens in how you exist in every room you occupy. You become different to be around, not different in a way that requires explanation or announcement, different in a way that is simply felt, in the particular quality of presence you bring, the composure that does not waver when the situation becomes uncomfortable, the listening that is genuine rather than the waiting for an opportunity to speak, the silence that does not feel empty, but rather full of something that the person in it has earned the right to be quiet about. The words, when they come, that carry the weight of having been genuinely considered rather than simply produced. The decisions under pressure that demonstrate the kind of clarity that only the trained mind under pressure can access. All of these are felt by the people around you. They cannot always name what they are feeling, but they feel it. And what they feel produces in them the kind of deep, genuine respect that is the truest form of the feared this title is pointing toward. Not the fear of threat, the respect of recognition, the recognition that whoever they are dealing with is operating at a level that carelessness and manipulation and surface-level engagement cannot handle, that this person sees clearly, moves deliberately, cannot be easily provoked or easily read or easily redirected from the direction they have genuinely chosen. That dealing with them requires a quality of genuine engagement that they do not have to offer to most people. Here is something important about how this presence actually develops. It cannot be performed convincingly. People who try to perform the trained mind, who adopt the aesthetic of stillness and deliberateness without doing the actual work underneath, are always eventually exposed by pressure, because pressure is the test, and the performed version of stillness collapses under genuine pressure, while the trained version does not. The only way to have the real thing is to build the real thing, through the actual daily practice, through the genuine examination of patterns, through the honest development of emotional mastery, through the consistent practice of the considered response, through the long-game commitment to building something real rather than performing something impressive. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." The trained mind does not argue about what it is. It simply is, and the being of it is felt by everyone in its presence before a single word of explanation is spoken. That is what you are building, not the performance of a trained mind, the actual thing, built day by day through the honest and unglamorous practice that the Stoics called the examined life, the life that is being continuously refined rather than simply lived, continuously examined rather than simply experienced, continuously trained rather than simply expressed. And the person produced by that continuous training is not just more effective. They are more genuinely themselves, more aligned with their actual values, more capable of genuine choice, more free in the only sense of freedom that cannot be taken away, the freedom of a mind that has been trained to be genuinely its own. That is what becomes feared. That is what earns the deep, genuine respect. And that is what this conversation has been building toward from the first word. Fear is still the wrong word. Respect is right. The deep kind. The kind that cannot be performed or purchased or inherited. The kind that is earned through the quality of a mind that has been worked on so deliberately and so consistently that it has become something genuinely different from what it was. 8 lessons. The untrained mind belongs to everyone who shaped it. The inherited patterns show up daily in ways invisible until you examine them honestly. Examine them. Begin to reclaim what is yours. Emotional mastery is not suppression. It is the developed capacity to feel fully without being run by what you feel. Built through the daily practice of the genuine pause, the mind becomes what it consistently consumes. Audit the first 30 minutes of your morning. Audit your most frequent conversations. Audit the digital environments you inhabit habitually. Feed the mind deliberately and protect what you are building. The considered response builds a reputation that the reactive one never could. Think before speaking, every time, without exception. Stillness under pressure is the training that separates levels. It is built in the ordinary moments, not the extraordinary ones. Every small practice is building the capacity for the significant moment. Discipline is not restriction. It is the architecture of genuine freedom. The freedom to operate as you genuinely intend, rather than as the conditioned patterns direct. The long game belongs to the trained mind. Each day of practice is not preparation. It is the building itself. One practice day compounding on another until the accumulation becomes undeniable. And the trained mind in the world produces a presence that is felt before it is explained. A quality of composure and clarity and deliberateness that cannot be performed, only built. Marcus Aurelius built that mind through decades of daily private practice. Epictetus built it in the most genuinely difficult circumstances available. Seneca wrote about it in letters that have survived 2,000 years, precisely because they describe something genuinely true rather than merely impressive. The practice is available to you, not in extraordinary circumstances, in the ordinary moments of the ordinary day, in the next pause before the reactive response, in the next deliberate choice of what you feed your mind, in the next considered word chosen over the unfiltered one, in the next moment of stillness chosen over the comfortable noise, one practiced day at a time, until the accumulation becomes undeniable, until the trained mind built quietly and consistently through daily practice becomes the presence that every room feels when you walk in. That is what you are building. Start today. If this found you at exactly the right moment, leave the only thing that matters right now. I train my mind every single day.